while I'm finished huffing this coffee, and we're just chatting here a little bit. Let's talk. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about before we get going on our virtual machine setup for work. Let's talk about what companies do to let you learn. Um, when I was at IBM, they had a thing called Think Friday. Everybody could just do whatever they wanted on Friday as long as they were learning and they felt like they were contributing to something. They could work on open source projects. They could work on their personal workstations and configure their Git resources or learn whatever policy. But I mean, the account I'm on, it doesn't allow you to do the whole time, but they give you like 4 hours on a Friday, but pretty much everybody takes the whole day. It's pretty clear. Depending on what you have pressing, right? So you have to make that decision for yourself. Think about this. If you're actually looking around at job opportunities and stuff like that, one of the things you might want to ask if you're interviewing with a company, because God knows it's a buyer's market for tech workers right now, and you get to run all the rules, is make sure you ask about this, how much time you get off. I'm not talking about like vacation time off. I'm talking about what is the policy. Yana just posted, I think, one of the cloud native people on Twitter, about how important it was to give people free time for innovation and some just free thought. And Google's been doing this forever too on Friday. Intelligent companies know how to do this. IBM has been doing this for a very long time. They kind of get out of the way of their smartest engineers, and they just let them innovate and think about things and explore. And if you're on a tight deadline, that's fine sometimes, but you have to have some time to be free from the deadline for the creativity to work, because creativity doesn't work under stress. Hey, look, it's 11:11. It's 11:11, and that's the starting time, the official starting time that we're going to have on Saturdays. And when the boost comes up, we're going to be starting at 11:11 every day on every Saturday anyway for the boost stuff. I like this statement. So Ain't It Fun says, I made a big mistake where I ended up like 100% travel role and my skills stagnated and I grew to hate everything. You know what? It's true. It's really easy to fall into that trap. We all have done it. The travel as work. They say, no, that's essential for your job. But they have you like on an airplane all this time. A lot of times you're coding on the airplane or whatever. And they don't count it as work time. Of course, they're usually salary jobs. It's not, it's not hourly, so it's a different thing. It's funny too because I was the one who worked from home. Back when everybody else was working remote, and I had the reverse thing happen to me. Everybody at home, like our neighbors and everybody, and my wife at the time, and everybody, they all thought I was free to do stuff because I was working from home. Other like busy work things to do. Thank God we don't have to drive. Can we just say that for a bit? Thank God we don't have to drive into work anymore. I mean, because just that alone was burning like an hour and a half, 2 hours a day for me for a long time. I'm so glad I don't have to do that enough to go into work again. Seriously, you could triple my salary. I still would not go into work. I would go into work and, every once in a while for projects, but not regularly. I never would do that commute thing. It killed my soul. Maybe I would do it. If it was like, all right, you just go put your time in. I've heard people say that about Google. I've heard people say that they go work at Google just to put the time in, and it's kind of like a university, and then they go off and do whatever else after that. And I don't know how I feel about that. From the mouth of people who know, many of the best engineers don't even work for FANG companies. We've talked about this pretty regularly over here. I'm not saying don't work for a FANG company. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, we already talked about M not even being in the FANG, like Manga, if Microsoft's in there, but still there's other stuff out there because it's just a natural extension of working from home. And I've talked about this before. I really feel like one of the great frontiers that's left. I mean, used to be fired to chatting at work, and I think that one of the next frontiers is for workplaces to stop with the stigma of not talking to people who don't work at your workplace. All right. Been doing it for 25 years, and they think they're being innovative by introducing hybrid work at the company. I'm like, okay, have fun with that. Yeah, I'm glad you're finally catching up. What I love about this is that the engineers are all going, hey, ultra rich CEOs who, got your money by breaking the backs of engineers. Fuck right off. Love it. I love it. Looking around, and you just can't pause. There's so much opportunity for people out there the people who have the skills are like, yeah, what you got? What you got? What you got for me? Huh? What you got for me? Huh? I mean, isn't it glorious? I love it. I just love it. You know what it is? This is the revolution. This is the revolution that has been pent up, and people have been skirting around the edges of this revolution forever. It's finally here. People are tired of being worked as slaves in the tech industry. VirtualBox. So you need to download VirtualBox right away if you haven't done that. Just get VirtualBox 6.1 and go ahead and download it. I've got that downloaded and installed. So this is give you something to do during a break, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that. LTS. I'm not going to get the latest and greatest because I want the server that's most likely going to be on systems I'm going to manage. And I'm going to put Docker in this and build up a Docker VM myself, so I don't have to use Docker Desktop or Rancher Desktop or whatever. Workspace or whatever. And Linux, yes. And then we need to go do Ubuntu 64-bit and click next. 2 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm gonna give it a virtual disk this you can't change, so I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. Yes. Finish that. So now you have a workspace. It's powered off. It's a machine. It's like as if you had a piece of hardware with nothing attached to it. And VirtualBox is going to actually prompt you to insert your USB effectively when we start it up. So that's going to be the next step. And my computer is like doing its thing. And we need to go find our image that we downloaded. Downloads, Ubuntu Server, open. They don't do Ubuntu Minimal anymore. There's just the ISO image, and then there's the cloud images. The cloud images are minimal, but if you're going to do that, you can download it's actually called the .img file. It is a QCOW2 cloud image that you can download, but that's a different process. We're just doing installation from the ISO this time, so it's different. The very first things you should do if you have password enabled. So we're going to do the SSH copy ID and then log in just the one time, and then it will log you out, and now you can go again. And now it'll just log you straight in. A direct exposure to the net, but through your host machine's network. No, that would be NAT. That would be NAT. Bridged means that your computer inside your computer is just the same as if any other computer on your home network. That means my router knows about it. It's important to let you know that you can actually run the SSH server on Windows and connect to it through SSH, just like you would connect to the same, to Anton now, which would be my other Linux machine, all from the same WSL. My fan starts to come on when I just try to edit files with VI, and it lags out on the K keystrokes and stuff like that. It's actually pretty bad. It's not unworkable. It's just for a really intense VI session, it's too slow. So and so that has not, my experience has been that that's not the same with VMs. VMs have no lag whatsoever because they've dedicated RAM and they've dedicated CPU to it, and so you can literally type as fast as you possibly can from the terminal. And so vmrun.exe is going to run, this is because this is WSL2, when I add the exe on the end of it, WSL2 does its like crazy magic, and it actually runs it from the Windows system, not from Linux. So that's what we're doing here. In order to get that to work, by the way, don't forget to add the VMware path to your WSL2 path so you can run these Windows commands from WSL2. Otherwise, that won't work. All right. So you need that in your script so that this will start up my Anton virtual machine without a head. I know that's gross, but then it takes up less resources and it doesn't fire up VirtualBox to like clutter up everything. And we can go on that path and see how that goes. Thank you for that. Waiting for Anton to power on. So that's it. I have a nice little successful command, and now I can SSH into Anton because my stuff is all set up. So I should be able to. It's still starting up. Let's see how long it takes. It might take longer than I'm going to probably write a more generic version of that on the stream here, because I want to be able to set up potentially Kerberos or LDAP login systems that will tie the two systems together. So that's something that's going to be coming. I haven't done that yet, but I do want to do that later. Idea what they are. What are they? Are they Chromebooks that are not Chromebooks because they're elite? I don't know. I've already talked about this though before. Laptop at all would be if I was a really serious pen tester or hacker, and I needed to go get certified, because you can't even go. You have to go to DEF CON to get certified for the OSCE and OSCP. I'm from offensive security, and they require a beefy laptop just to be able to run the virtualizations to create your Windows vulnerabilities. Hackers with gamer systems, I was like, I'm sure there's a hacker out there who doesn't game, who doesn't want to be known as like having an Alienware or some shit that takes, a power cord to run anything and weighs 15 pounds. I was like, yeah, that's probably why. Times I've done print as PDF, and then it just prints the same things that would go to the printer right to a file. And that makes a beautiful PDF for you pretty much every time. Yeah, and so I would do print to PDF. That would be my suggestion. Yeah, chat, not fucking WeChat from WeWork, a company that should die a horrible death. I will not. Yes. So yeah, my Git repos and my dot files, and I have a standard way of doing that. I make a directory called repos with a capital R, because it's usually on my laptop and I want it to point out. I started doing that after even Linux started using capital letters for home directory special things. GNU only, make directory -p. -p does not work on Linux because Unix doesn't have a -p. But I'm going to make github.com rwx rob, and then cd into github.com rwx rob. All right, and then we're going to start git pulling. GitHub. We can come back here, and to test your key, you do ssh git at github.com, and it will tell you, hey, hi, you've made it. That's how you know that you got your key set up properly, and you can start to clone stuff. My dot files here, I have a setup script that I have written. I thought about doing Ansible or something, but this just gets the job done. And it creates all the symlinks I need for the different files and stuff, so that I can just like relog in and have it work and give me all the new settings. And now you see that it turns over and does the right thing. And now I can, do whatever I was doing before. It's hard to tell it's not my WSL system at this point because it just works. It's here that I use. So let's do the GitHub tool. I use that all the time. Let's go ahead and install that. So /install gh. Boom, and I have that. I don't have to worry about it. That's why I went with Ubuntu. Clone command. Oh wait, did I not save it? Oh, it's a function. Sorry. So this is how I pull stuff down, and it's a function so that it can CD into it. You couldn't do that if it was a script. So now it doesn't seem like that much right now, but I promise you it is, because it doesn't have to cache it like WSL2 does the first time. It's like really annoying. So there's some magic going on that I don't like. I'm going to be doing all my work from a VM instead of from WSL2, though WSL2 technically is a VM manager to fuck around with. Yeah, Go 1.13 is the new standard. I mean, it's pretty much Go 1.13 and Go 1.18 are the only ones that are going to matter from now on. So if you're doing that kind of thing. So setting up, I'm configuring my son of Anton's. I kind of want to call it Anton Jr. It's just too much to type. The extra 2 characters is just too much. So my VM shall be named Anton in memory of Anton. It's notably different. The difference between typing speed in the VM versus typing speed in WSL2 is notably different. And I think it's because of the brokering between WSL2 and the underlying system that's causing the problem. So I'm all about the VM now. Yes, oh my God, it's all back. I love it. This is definitely the way to go. Yeah, this is definitely the way to go. Running a VM on side of your Windows is definitely the way to go. We do have the bug still left here in the old Docker, but we got Docker working just fine on Anton, and now Anton Jr. whatever you want to call it. And now we're going to continue to go through the things that need to be installed here. Do you plan on doing a video on Docker and WSO2? And the answer is no, because it's not worth doing. Docker should be run from a VM. Docker has to be run from a VM no matter what. Docker Desktop and Rancher Docker Desktop are both using Docker and VM. But it's better if you install your own VM and run Docker in that. I recommend using what I call a workstation VM. It's only 2 gigs and 2 CPU cores for RAM and VirtVM. So that's what we will be doing. That's what we're going to be doing the boost. It's what I suggest people do. I'm going to be going through that tomorrow as well for the beginner stuff to prepare that material. I look this up again. This sets the buffer for putting out stuff. We went to the say print instead of the print command, which adds a line return. And we had a better pandoc detection in Perl. So this is an open thing. It's in my dot files and my scripts. What it does is it just detects what's on the system and does the right thing. I don't think so. No, I mean, you know what I like about Rust? Rust, if you like shell scripting, you love Perl because that's what it's made to do. Perl is a shell script. That's it. It's not more. It's just a better awk. The end. That's it. Stop keep harshing on it. It was never supposed to be a web backend language. Very easily like chained functions together. That's what this is. And it's usually got a lot of regex in it because that's why you go for Perl. Perl invented the best regex of all time. It's embedded in every other language, including JavaScript, Python, Go, Rust, C. They all use PCRE regular expressions that Perl fucking invented. The end. No, honestly don't. Except for maybe this. Sudo apt install Ruby. A good guess, huh? Good guess. I figured out how to install Ruby. Because Twirl needs it, so I guess I need Ruby. Is there a point in using Ubuntu Desktop? Yes. The point is I want to create my own cloud locally on my machine. And I want to use Ubuntu servers because that's the kind of things I use in the wild. I don't use Ubuntu Desktop. I hate the color of the desktop. Plus, it's just overhead for GUI when I already have all the GUI in my Windows. So then I can just run, I can just connect an SSH in and I got everything I need. Server, because server's got a minimal amount of stuff on it. And it's got everything I need because I just need the terminal. There's no graphic Linux tools that I ever need, ever really. I might use Burp Suite once upon a time, but not now. The system we could have the USB mounted, but the thing I'm specifically interested in is, can I create a mount point on VirtualBox that mounts a media device for the USB while also on Windows? So I just was reminded as I was doing VFAT mounting USB in VirtualBox that when you make a file, it does it as executable automatically because it's an older file system type. So don't stress out. You can't actually change that. It won't work. It still just keeps it. So VFAT forces a permission somehow. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but that's what it looks like. I can still write to the files and stuff. It's just it makes the permissions look weird. So yeah. Demasking events allow you to specify to specifically determine the modes used. Show exec will only set the executable bits in the file. Okay. I have them in a Git repo that's rather large actually, but it's only on a USB stick. So we mounted the USB. Got that all set up, and then I did a git clone to the private repo, and then everything is just linked in from there symbolically to get to what I need to have. That's very manageable, and that's all set up. Virtual machine. So it in every way is just like every other machine on your system. And the virtualization technology was popularized by a company called VMware, who still makes VMware workstation. But another free one is called VirtualBox. It's actually pretty damn slow when you run it as a VM because of the graphicness of it all. If you go Kali Linux, in case you don't know, is a security distro that's used for training and learning. Kali, if you want to get OSCP certified, you really need to learn it at some point, even if you might not use it professionally. I want to show you this. Based on that question, I want you to see what it looks like when you download a machine. So it's downloading a virtual machine. It's like downloading a computer, kind of. People joke about downloading more RAM. Well, this is pretty damn close. You're not downloading RAM, but you can download a whole machine. So import appliance, local file system. Go find it. It's in my downloads. Kali, And next. Now, the thing that's great about this is it tells you all the settings. It says what all the settings are, and they're like pre-configured, so you don't have to do any of that yourself. It's very fast. ISO images, which I did from my virtual machine, and you have to run through the installation steps, which is fine. And we're going to do that with the beginner reviews, because knowing about how to do the installation that way is good, because that's how you would do it if you downloaded a USB stick and made a machine, a real machine. And you can actually, but see, this is just as if you had it running on hardware, so you can go ahead and do everything here. We're going to go ahead and shut it off. Shut it off. We'll go ahead and shut it down. There you go. And you can take snapshots and stuff. It seems like that would reduce performance and layer fragility on the host OS. No. So first of all, VMs don't do anything to the host OS. They may, when they're running, to take away a little bit of RAM and CPU, but your systems can almost always afford that. Particularly on Windows with a 16 gigabyte RAM, but even 4 gig of RAM, you're fine for 2 gig RAM, 2 And CPUs. The reason that I do it is because I can use Docker inside of VM, which is the only way to run Docker at all. The only way to run Docker, period, is inside of a VM, and run through desktop and Docker desktop. Download and install VMs that are really lightweight that are designed to do the same thing. But if you already need a VM for other reasons, it makes like, well, why don't you run Linux on your desktop? And I've covered that a lot already. So, like 0.01% of the people out there can actually run Linux on their desktop at work. Most of the rest have to use Windows or Mac, and I prefer to prepare people for that scenario, so I use that deliberately. Also, it makes streaming easier. One of the interesting discoveries recently is that it's actually better to run a VM in VirtualBox than it is WSL2. If you want a highly performant, doesn't lag on Vim keystrokes system. And I've experienced this very directly. You can watch my VODs and see it. It's actually really bad. So the solution to that is to make a VM that's really lightweight, that's on the system, that I can then SSH into just like it was a server, and it'd just be a local server on my system. I don't need any of the graphics applications that come with a desktop Linux, and because that's not part of my job. So I'm fine. When you have a full desktop environment, you break something, you're screwed. You have to redo the whole thing. It's not that hard, but it takes hours, minutes, whatever. But if you do it at the VM, you can just snap back to the previous one. Not only that, you can share your virtual machine snapshots across different systems, even from a Mac to a Windows machine. So that's the reason to use a VM at the end of the day. All right. Let's go back to main here. All this unpinning and pinning messages and everything that I'm doing right now, you can thank Windows for that, because I couldn't do any of this if I was on Linux as my desktop OS. Bonsai. I'm going to go further than this, though, and I'm going to actually install everything so that I can connect to this from PowerShell, and I can disable WSL2 from my system. So that's the next challenge. Let's see if we can do that. I thought that there was a hard line between this thing and this thing, and if you went up beyond that line, you would get in trouble for cores, and that's not true. It's true for RAM, but it's not true for VMs. You can have a 4-core system, and you can run 8 VMs, and it'll be just fine. Oh, it's a buyer's market. So it's like if you have tech skills, particularly Linux tech skills, you can write your own tickets. So there's a question you should ask every person you're interviewing with. Can I use Linux on my hardware on my desktop? Yes or no? If not, don't join up. Force them to do it. And eventually, you'll find some play. Frankly, now having said that, here's the fact. The fact of the matter are most of us are stuck with Windows and Mac where we work. And I didn't ask that question, so I'm being forced to use a Mac, which I don't mind at all because it's the largest Unix distribution in the world. It's fine. But you should probably know what you're getting into. From my Pop! OS system until the latter days of Pop! OS when it really started fucking tanking. Pop! OS is shit. Now, it was great a year ago. And I was able to do all kinds of amazing things with it, and I had uptimes of like 30 days. But if you really want to break into the industry and you want to do it freely, VirtualBox is the only way, even though the real thing that turned me off about VirtualBox is it doesn't support M1 Macs. So I went down this whole thing where I'm only going to do Mac and Windows to help people get ready for the enterprise. Oh shit, VirtualBox doesn't work on M1 Macs. All the Macs are M1 now. This is a problem on the internet, and just have it work. That's supported everywhere, for which they can find images that are pre-made. And there's 2 options there: VirtualBox and VMware. QEMU and KVM and all of that, and Libvirt is fantastic. I love it, but it's irrelevant for most people doing work. I have any Docker desktop? Wait, you got to talk about that. You got to justify that statement. I'm gonna copy Docker desktop. Okay, well, there you go. Docker desktop on an M1 is fast, but you can't use it at work because your work has to pay and they won't pay. Which I already was using before. I'm just kind of round. The one big thing that has really come about in all of this is the obvious need to use VirtualBox from the command line, because then you're headless and you're saving resources. Just trying to figure out how to get an alternative to Docker Desktop. You know what the best alternative is? Install a lightweight VM and put Docker in there as God intended, because that's what Docker Desktop is. Docker Desktop installs a virtual machine and then puts Docker in it, and you just don't see it. So, different modes. Is VirtualBox only type 2? So in case somebody's wondering, type 2 and type 1, what are they? Type 1, there are different types of hypervisors. Type 1 is close to the hardware. That means it's in the kernel kind of thing. And type 2 is an emulation in software. This tends to be slower. So that's what's going on. The first thing is you need to get them a Linux experience. So what is the question there, right? Do you go WSL2? Do you teach them how to brew and turn their machine into a pseudo Unix/Linux system? Or do you just give them a VM, right? So on my current position on that is that you should get a VM. You should just get a VM and start. And you start it up and you've got, VirtualBox or VMware to pick from. And at that point, you're running. And if you've got WSL2 or whatever, fine. You're running under type 2 emulation and you don't know better because you're a beginner and you're just starting out and you're just happy that it works and you're using your Linux every day and it's fine. And then, and then you discover, I can remove WSL2 and I can optimize my VirtualBox or my VMware to run in a different mode so that it starts to use a type 1 hypervisor, because you know what those are now and you care. And because you went down this path, you have the option to now do that. It grows with you. This particular path grows with you. You start out just having a VirtualBox machine running Kali or whatever, and you're just doing your Linux, and you end up with the ability to ultimately change your virtual machines into type 1 hypervisors over time as you learn how. WeChat is like a BitchX spiritual ancestor, I guess. That's what it is. But I can't get it to work. You seeing this? Are you seeing this? My fan just came on. Did you just see what just happened? That's a WSL2 only thing. That has never once happened to me in a VM. Not once. So that little delay that you just saw right there is the reason. So Anton, should I get rid of the name Anton or should I change it to TV? I think I'm going to keep Anton. I like Anton better. Yeah, Anton's better than TV. I gotta make sure I've had Anton. It's like, well, what's Anton? Anton is my personal system. Go through it right now. It just does. I'm sorry. I'm not a fan. I'm not. Containerd is fine. I mean, it's fine. They both have really bad problems, and it's like, pick your poison kind of thing at the end of the day. So there's a lot of reasons to use it WSL2, and there's a lot of reasons not to use WSL2. I want to try to talk about that as fast as I can. So the local things about the VM can do the WSL2 cannot. It can mount block storage devices. It can do consistent things without lag, and particularly my Pomo timer is one thing that used to lag heavily. Another thing that used to lag really heavily was just my VI sessions. They just could not keep up. But you see how this is nice and smooth for 1 second? If you watch my VODs from the other videos, you'll notice that never happened. It was always a 2-second delay because WSL2 just sucks for performance. It's like really slow. It's slow and laggy, and sometimes it wouldn't even do my VM. It's like really prominent to use VM over WSL2 is installation of Docker. You can put Docker in with no Docker desktop and it just works. In fact, it works the same way you would be configuring any system that you might work with in the cloud or in cloud native land, Kubernetes land, or any of that. So that's another really big others. You cannot do this with WSL2. Somebody came up with WSL export to get a backup, but you can't take and share an image. So what I can do with this is I can set up a workspace container image, a workspace image, and I can share it with my Macs and my other machines anytime I want, and I have a backup of everything I set up at the moment without reason. WSL2 cannot. So this means that like WSL2, when it's on, it's just pretty much on all the time. But with a VM, you could turn it off, pause it, and recover all of that memory if you wanted to use everything, every single bit of your Windows host system or whatever your host. You can take reliable backups. So taking reliable backups is like a no-brainer. Snapshots make it so that everything is automatically backed up. You can use Cisco AnyConnect. So WSL2 has had an open issue for 4 years that stops it from using WSL2 with AnyConnect. Restart your host server without restarting your VM. This is one that one of our viewers here mentioned. I'd love this. So this means that you can actually, Windows needs to reboot all the time, and maybe you want to use it for streaming or gaming or whatever, but you still want to use Linux, so you use a VM, and you just pause your VM and you restart your machine, and guess what? You come back, you're multiple VMs. Now, some people consider that this is probably not, strictly speaking, an advantage, but by using one VM image, you can make like 3 other images that are exactly the same. They're already pre-configured, and now you have a small cloud network running on your local host. Can do that with WSL2. Right, so let's talk a bit about the things on WSL2 can do that VMs can't do. This is the reason I started using WSL2 and said it was the best Linux desktop distro 2 weeks ago, and I still think that for most people it is the best Linux desktop distro, but I still think a VM is better even so than that, and I want to get into that. And these are the main reasons that I went sound and graphics. I have an XClip thing. I have a clip thing for streaming. I want to be able to run clips from the command line, and I want to be able to use all that goodness, and that is completely and totally supported. X is 100% supported in Windows 10 and 11 through GWSL to get X graphics support. You do not have direct access to you do have direct access to the Windows file system. That means when you do a find command, you can get everything. You can find everything on the file system for better or worse. And there's some really weird quirks with that, because if you create a file, it will get different permissions than what you're expecting depending on whether you create it in Windows or the other one. I really wanted to do when I got into this is be able to create VMs from bash scripts. You cannot create VMs from bash scripts on VirtualBox running on Windows. You can't do it. You have to be able to invoke that command on Windows, and you can't do that from a VM, because a VM is like being in a server in another galaxy. It has no access to that. You can't execute binaries from the bash shell. So executing binaries from the bash shell is something that's very nice to be able to do. I can run VMware that's kind of related to that, or VMbox. You can actually run stuff and just put .exe in the end, and it'll just work on WSL2. And this is important. I know this is a small thing, but you can run WSL2 with like clicking on one checkbox these days. And you don't have to install any additional virtual machine software or learn about virtualization, even though you probably should learn about virtualization. I mean, let's be real. That's what the whole thing is about. One of them, because you can't mount devices, which is big. I have a USB stick with private information on it, and I can't mount it. I can mount that in my VM, but I can't mount it in WSL2. And so I set up OpenSSH, and I just connected to it using it as kind of like a Git repo remotely. You can run SSH on the Windows system to do what you need. Now, this is actually really amazing. I've actually regularly done SSH space win and be able to go into my machine, run Chocolatey, even install Windows software from the bash command line remotely over SSH. Rep points for this. Well, I'm going to suggest that if you want to do your clips, those wonderful clips that, all that graphicness that you want to integrate your streaming, but you want to be able to fire it off from the command line, you can do it. You just have to set up an RTMP server with OBS going straight to Streamlabs, which is work, but it can be done. There are just not enough reasons for me to use WSL2 going forward. I still have it. It's still supported, but I'm planning on disabling it right now and using Anton, which is my local 2 gig, 2 core VM to do everything I need. I know gold was the one I was going for. I feel like it's cheating though. Like there's some like anti-aliasing or something going on with that color there. It's not like purely gold. I don't think that's purely gold somehow. This is so much faster. It's not even, it's crazy. It is so much faster, people. I can't even believe I was suffering through the pain of the slowness of WSL2. Oh my God, it's so much faster on a VM. Very much greater than WSL. It's like 1,000 kajillion times better. I can't believe I was... You know what? I was hopeful. It did pretty damn well until it didn't. Like, really didn't. There's a lot to catch up until they can get a current state of Ubuntu Server on a VM, which is what I just moved to because it's so much faster. And I wrote 2 entries in my Zolocast about this. Things WSL can do that VMs can't, and things VMs can do that WSL can't. But at the end of the day, there you go, right? So there's all our VMs. And then you can run it. You can do start VM Anton, and that will start it up. Yep. Isn't that great? And then I can just SSH into it. SSH Anton. It'll take a while for it to start up. Night, everybody. Go have fun with Jess. Let's relax a little bit. Yes. Bye-bye, everybody.